evening. And I know that many of you had a plan A, which you cancelled to be here this evening. So I really, really want to thank you, and I'm touched that you're here. Today, I'm going to just talk about three things. The first is that I figured out my love of art through serendipity. I never went to art school. Many people ask me if I always wanted to paint and be an artist, or if it's a recent thing. And the answer is it's both. My first recollection is of stacking my mother's cupboard and my cupboard, actually as a child, probably 2 years old. And my mum would make me stack the reds and the blues in separate piles. And my mum is an artist, and she just spoke here. And everything she did was very creative. So as a child, I had private art tuition from teachers who were, her colleagues. But I always got good grades in school, so I never went to art school. A lot of you know what India's like, and I went to business school instead. And I became a trader, buying and selling all day long. And it was fun, I loved it. But I always kept a box of oil paints at home, which I never used. Then, one day in 1998, in Singapore, I came home at 1 o'clock at night, and Aparna was there with me, and we pulled out this box of paints, and we pulled out the kitchen shelves because we didn't have canvas, and painted. And that was my first painting in 1998. It was called Sunset in the Thames. I'd just come back from London, and I figured that it was the time when the sun was setting over the Thames. And that's what inspired that painting. Over the next 9 years, I probably made only 3 more paintings, so I didn't really take to art. Till 2007. Having worked for many years in the financial markets, I was searching for something. So first I went to travel around the world, and then I worked for a charity. But my search continued. And one evening, as has been the case this evening, I invited a friend over for dinner who said, "Shivani, can I bring a friend along?" And I said, "Sure, no problem." So this lady, who was completely unknown to me, came to my home. And she was very gracious. She complimented my food and my flat and said, "This is very nice and that's very nice." And then she complimented all the paintings which were up on my wall, which were by various other artists, asking me about each one in detail. And finally, her eyes fell on the corner painting, and she said, "Whose painting is that?" And she probably didn't realize, but this little innocuous comment was like rocket fuel. So, I put up my collar, and I grew 10 feet tall, and I said, "Oh, that's my painting." So she started gushing, "Oh, it's so beautiful, and it's this and it's that. And do you have some more work to show me?" So I dived under the sofa, under the bed, and pulled out some tattered samples. And she was like, "Oh, this is amazing, and I'm a designer, so I do up the house of Bob Diamond and Jamie Diamond and Neil Diamond and I don't know, every other diamond. And do you mind if I show your paintings around when I do my next place?" And I looked at her with eyes wide open. And I was like, "Sure." Of course, I never had any art, so there was nothing to show around. The next morning, those of you who know me very well know that I never do anything in half measures. So I went to the art store, and I bought 15 canvases. Like, some of them were actually 6 feet by 7 feet. That's one of them. And I set to work. Before this, I'd only ever painted like a 20 by 20 inch, but my work was cut out for the next few months. And I absolutely loved it. I just really, really loved it. And a few months passed, and I had several of these canvases ready. And I rang her up. 4 calls went to voicemail. The 5th one, she answered, "Darling, I'm in a meeting. Can I call you back?" And she never did. So at that time, I was living in a flat which was 700 square feet big, you know. So these canvases all over, and like Stephen Wynn, every time I stretched my arms, my elbow went into one of the paintings. And they may not have been Picasso's, but I was gutted. So I was absolutely desperate, and I needed to get rid of these paintings. And I went from art gallery to art gallery, trying to ask them to exhibit my paintings. In 2008, some of them told me they were booked till 2018. And just when I was sort of losing it, I get a phone call from the art bar in Walton Street. They had a cancellation, and they said, "Can you do an exhibition in 2 days from now?" So I negotiated a bit for 4 days. And I've never worked that hard in my life, but I did, and I put up an exhibition. It was a success. But more importantly, what it did was, it gave me room in my place and in my life to paint more. I had discovered a passion. And this brings us to the second thing I want to talk about. I believe that there are some things in this world, the more you share, the more you have. So, for me, it was about sharing my passion, but equally, it was about sharing my life with somebody. So early in my career, or in my art career, I started giving away all the profits to charity. So one year, I was home, my parents live in Lucknow, and I decided to buy all the benches for the railway hospital in Lucknow. The doctors were overwhelmed. They were like, "Why are you doing this?" And I just said, "Because I feel like." And it was a wonderful feeling. Earlier this year, I had an exhibition in Seattle, and the proceeds for that went to an organization called Upaya. Now, unconnected to our evening today, the CEO of Upaya wrote a letter to me, and I'm going to read out a portion of it to you. He writes, "This time, last year, Bibi Kausar was jobless and struggling to feed her 2 sons, Aman and Rehan. Not able to make ends meet, she was considering pulling Rehan out of school because she couldn't afford the tuition. However, several months ago, and that's probably around April, May when I had the exhibition, Upaya helped her to build Eco Karga, a new business that has created dignified weaving jobs in her Bhagalpur, Bihar community. Now Bibi is earning a dependable income, her family is eating a balanced diet, and she can easily cover the cost of Rehan's education." I was really humbled that some of the paintings that many of you have bought, the small, the contribution that you have made has gone towards changing Bibi's life, and perhaps at some point changing Rehan's life as well. And I want to thank you for that. To me, the biggest gift is if I can share what I love, live my life with a passion, and share my inspiration. And that brings us to the third topic that I would like to talk about, which is inspiration. Because often people ask me, "So Shivani, why did you make that painting? Or why did you do this? Or why did you do that?" And I could probably waffle on for hours about each one, but I don't want to do that. So I'm going to just read a small verse that I wrote a couple of years ago. It says, "I do not know when I had my first tryst with art. Perhaps as a child, when my mother made mountains of rice with an egg yolk sunrise to engage me as she fed me. Or when I arranged my cupboard with her, stacking the reds and blues in separate piles. At the age of 5, I painted a cat. My teacher gave me a gold star. I touched bravely an alligator in the zoo. It reminded me of lychees brushing against my leg as I climbed a lychee tree in my grandfather's home. My mother's lustrous pearls from Basra remind me of war. Looking at a bright yellow Rothko, I smell bright Alfonso mangoes. I love watching the morning sunbeams race through the stratosphere and the bullets of Formula One as they shine into the sunset. I'm a trader. I love watching plants grow. I love smiling eyes. And I love a tube of rich blue paint. Thank you.